Hello, Willowbrook family. Today's daily Devo is found in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. My nephew works as a flight dispatcher for a major airline, and part of his job sometimes requires him to ride in the cockpit during flights. He sits in what's called the jump seat, which is a small fold-down seat positioned just behind the two pilots. Now, it's not glamorous, but it does give you a front row view to everything that happens in the air. Well, on one particular flight, things got tense. One of the pilots caught a faint smell of something burning. It wasn't really strong, but that's enough to take things seriously. Immediately, the pilots and my nephew all had to put on oxygen masks, and not the little ones that drop down from the ceiling for the passengers, but the full-size masks that covers their whole face. This was the first time my nephew had ever done this. As he was putting the mask on and securing it on his face, questions flooded his mind. What's burning? I wonder how bad this is. What's going to happen next? But then he looked at the pilots, and both of them were calm, focused, professional. There was no panic, no raised voices, just steady hands and quiet confidence. And something happened inside of my nephew. Their calm became his calm. He thought, well, if they're not panicking, maybe I don't need to either. And the plane landed safely. There was no emergency, just a precaution. But that moment stuck with him, not just because of the potential danger, but because of the quiet authority of the ones in control. And this quiet authority is what we see in Mark chapter 4. After teaching the people, Jesus says to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Now, what the disciples didn't know was that a storm was waiting for them. It's important to see that this was Jesus' idea to cross the lake, not the disciples. You know, obedience to Jesus doesn't exempt us from storms. In fact, it sometimes leads us into them. Just because you're facing a hardship doesn't mean you're outside of God's will. The disciples were in the center of God's will and still faced the storm. Now, in verse 36, there's a little detail that we find in Mark's gospel, and it's very easy to miss. Other boats were with him. Now, these boats weren't empty, they were filled with people. That's going to be important later. Now, the Sea of Galilee is known for sudden, violent storms. The waves broke over the boat. The situation was critical, yet Jesus was asleep. This sleep shows not only the humanity of Jesus, which he was exhausted, but also his sovereign peace. He wasn't worried. But as the storm continued, the disciples said, "Don't you care if we drown?" The disciples confused God's silence with God's absence. When it feels like Jesus is asleep in your storm, remember he is not unaware or uncaring. He is with you. Calm doesn't mean absence. It means confidence. Jesus wakes up and rebukes the storm in the way that he rebukes demons. It's the same Greek wording. And just like that, it obeys. The sea actually became completely calm, not just calmer, but perfectly still. Then Jesus said, "Why are you so afraid? You still have no faith." Now, this rebuke isn't harsh, but it's revealing. They had seen his miracles, but their faith still had limits. You know, faith doesn't mean we won't fear. It means we don't let fear have the final word. See, the cure for fear is not courage. It's trust in the one who commands the wind and the waves. Now, remember the other boats that were with them? When Jesus calmed the storm, he saved more than just the men in his boat. His power moved outward. So never forget this. There are others who are in their own boats, but in the same storm as you. And when Jesus brings peace to you, he may also be calming the sea for those around you. This miracle reminds us that Jesus is not only Lord in the calm, but he is also Lord in the chaos. You see, when he's silent, he's not still. So, when you can't see him working, rest assured, he has not abandoned ship and he has not abandoned you. Have a great day in the Lord, Willowbrook.